All right, here we go. Today we have Errol Musk, father of Elon Musk, who's currently the richest man in the world with a net worth of $427 billion, which is almost $500 billion. Welcome to VladTV.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, I want to get into your whole story, but before I do, your son, Elon, has been in the news recently because when he was at the inauguration, he made a salute which looked kind of like a Nazi Hitler salute. Did you see that?
Yeah, I had people send me the photograph.
What did you think when you saw that?
Well, it's nonsense, you know. I mean, obviously it's not it's just an air pump. What do you call it? A sort of a victory wave, you know, they air pumping, you know. Nothing like that. I mean, you know, that's ridiculous. You know.
Well, the reason why people are referencing it is because back in 2023, Elon actually responded to a tweet. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Well, there was a tweet that someone put up that said, Jewish communities have been pushing the exact kind of dialectical hatred against whites they claim to want people to stop using against them. I'm deeply disinterested in giving the tiniest shit now about Western Jewish populations, coming to the disturbing realization that hordes of minorities that support flooding their country don't exactly like them too much. You want the truth? Send it to your face, there it is. And then Elon actually responded to that tweet and said, you have said the actual truth.
Well, you know, what was he saying? He's saying it's a good thing or a bad thing to have people coming into your country, or what is your problem?
Well, it was two different parts. So the first thing is saying that Jewish communities push a hatred against whites that they claim that they want people to stop doing to them. That's the first part.
I haven't seen that. I've never seen that.
And the second one is, I'm deeply disinterested in giving the tiniest shit about how Western Jewish populations coming to the disturbing realization that the hordes of minorities that support flooding their country don't exactly like them too much. So I guess they're saying that the immigrants that are coming into these countries don't like Jewish people either. That's the gist of it. And then Elon's response, he tweeted a response that said, you have said the actual truth.
You know, I can't imagine what he means or even what your statement means. First of all, the Jewish people are so heavily integrated into Western society. You know, 50% of my friends are Jewish. I'm about 1/8 Jewish or something because my mother's grandfather was a Jewish guy. Elon, that for that matter, then would be also a little bit. But, you know, we favor the Jewish people very much. So we love them. I mean, they're such smart people. How can you not favor them? But, yeah, no, I can't understand what that means. And I certainly can't imagine that people coming into a country particularly isolate one group of people, like, let's say, the Jews or something, and don't like them. It's conceivable. It's conceivable because if many of the people coming in, let's say, are from the Muslim world, well, there's a sort of, you know, you're sort of brought up in the Muslim world to be at odds with the Jewish people, conceivably. I can't say for sure. On the other hand, I've just spent 2 weeks in Dubai with the Sheikh of Dubai as a guest of his. And I mean, these are the finest people you could ever imagine. And not the slightest kind of, you know, dislike for anyone. They're very proud people in their own right. So I think it's just nonsense, utter nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, these things are blown out of proportion sometimes, and sometimes you respond to tweets, you don't fully understand the context of them. I think that's what Elon ultimately said. He said he doesn't really understand anti-Semitism that much. And I think he actually visited a Holocaust museum at one point shortly afterwards. So, you know, it is what it is.
Yes, no, he's been to, you know, Israel. Look, I mean, I don't like to, just show interest in I do care about the Jewish people and Israel, obviously. It's part of the Judeo-Christian world. At the same time, I also am very fond of people I've met in the world there, like in Cairo and in Egypt. And to me, they are just as important. I've never been to Gaza, but I think those people should get as fair a shake as possible. I don't think it's just one-sided story. On the other hand, you know, what these so-called terrorist organizations try to do is you know, borders on way beyond insanity. So, you know, at the end of the day, we're all people, we're all trying to get along with each other. And I think that's what Elon would say as well. You know, we all need to see the best in each other. What else?
Yeah, I agree. I'm Jewish myself, and my entire life, Israel has been at war, with various organizations surrounding them. And I just hope at some point it'll all be over and there could be some peace in the Middle East.
Yes, of course. I mean, everybody in the Judeo-Christian world, is very concerned about Israel. I subscribe to the fact that Israel has, been there 2,500 or 3,000 years ago as Israel. I mean, let's face it, you can't say now, that's not where they should be. I mean, that's nonsense. I mean, obviously Israel is Israel. It's been through the most difficult times imaginable. I think it's very good what we've got today. But I do think that somehow or other we have to, I read a while back that the Palestinians at one point meant people of Jewish and Arab faith who lived in that area, So Palestinians were people, that's like in 100 years ago. And, those were called the Palestinians, and they grouped the Muslims, or rather the Arabs and the Jewish people together. So today we talk about the Palestinians as being like purely the Arab element. But I think that if somehow we can give them a fair shake. I hate to read about these Hamas. I actually had a telephone call from Hamas a while back, I must tell you. But at any rate,
Wait. You had a telephone call from someone from Hamas?
Yes. It was quite a long time ago.
How did that go?
It was in after the incredible atrocities that took place in October the 7th, on October the 7th, I think. A while after that, I'm not too sure how far, maybe already in the next year, I'm not sure, they wanted Starlink. So I got a message from them because they said they can't contact Elon and they need Starlink in Gaza. So I said, all right, well, I'll forward their request to Elon. And then subsequently, Starlink was enabled in Gaza with the idea that with the proviso that it it's only for humanitarian purposes, so-called, And so I did have, they're just people. I mean, just other people. They're not, it's not Superman and Spider-Man,
So now that we get that out of the way, I want to get into your story.
Sure.
So you're born in South Africa.
Yes, I'm born in South Africa. Elon's born in South Africa. Yeah.
Now, when you were a child, apartheid was still a thing.
Yes.
From your point of view, how would you describe it?
Well, apartheid was something that, South Africa inherited from the European powers that occupied Africa, up until about this sort of starting in the 60s, they started to sort of get rid of Africa. So everywhere in Africa, up until about, 65 or so, was apartheid. So if you went to any country, which I did, Rhodesia in those days, Northern Rhodesia, the Congo, it was all apartheid. Everywhere was apartheid. It's just that South Africa put a label on it in 1948, calling it apartheid. But we inherited this in South Africa, we inherited it from the British occupier, or the British government that we had here for nearly, at the time, nearly 200 years. So I don't know if you know, for example, people of color were not allowed into Holland at all, although Holland had many places in the world, like, Batavia in the east and all that sort of stuff. Colored people were not allowed into Holland. It was against the law. So even we had a colored governor in the Cape when the Dutch were running South Africa, that's before the British, called Simon van der Stel. He was a mulatto colored. He wasn't allowed, he was the governor of the Cape and a very famous guy. He was never allowed into Holland. So these are things we inherited. And unfortunately, it took time to get rid of these type of things. And, ingrained beliefs, had to be put aside. It took time. And today in South Africa, we actually have a situation today in South Africa where, it's like the best it's ever been. We don't have any kind of racism. I've never seen racism. In fact, I'll give you $100 if you can show me, even more if you could show me a racist incident in South Africa. It doesn't exist.
Well, you actually remember when Mandela got locked up.
Yes, I do. I was at Mandela's trial in 1963, when I was in final year school, I went on my bicycle I was interested in that kind of thing, and he was on trial at the synagogue, oddly enough, in the main street in Pretoria, the capital city. He was on trial for murder, the murdering of women and children. And he was sentenced to death. And then the sentence was commuted, which resulted in people literally crying and weeping in the street because they wanted him hanged because of the terrible things that he had done. But thank God they didn't hang him. I mean, I don't believe in that kind of thing. And he went on to become a very inspirational leader.
I mean, if I were to tell you in 1963 that Mandela is going to go to prison for 27 years and then get out and then become the first black president of South Africa, what would you say to me?
Well, I wouldn't have said that in the street at the time, because you would have probably had upset people very much, because they would have thought you off your head. But I've said recently, about this chap, Tommy Robinson, I said on British television that he's similar to some respects to Mandela, because they've jailed him in solitary confinement for 18 months because he is pointing fingers at the gang rape gangs in England. It's also a political prisoner, and I said on the television, Tommy Robinson is very likely one of your future prime ministers. Same sort of thing, and I equated it to the situation with Mandela. I mean, who would have thought? But in the end, common sense prevails, and Mandela was a fantastic influence. Unfortunately, I saw him at the inauguration. I've never actually met him, but when he was inaugurated as president, but I never actually met him. But he was a tremendously good influence on South Africa.
Okay, so you're living in South Africa, you graduate high school, and you go to college at the University of Pretoria.
I went to the University of Witwatersrand.
Oh.
Wits. And then I subsequently went to Pretoria University.
Okay, got it. Now, your first wife, May, you knew her since high school.
I knew her since primary school. I met her, I would say I bumped into her at primary school when she was about 10 years of age. I was 12. I'd just come back from England. We'd lived in England for 2 years with my mom and my brother. And I met her at the school, also bumped into her at that primary school. I was with her right through high school. I went out with most of her friends. I never went out with her. But towards the end of the high school, I started dating her. And we got on very well.
And then in 1970, you guys got married.
We dated for 6 years, and then we got married, yes.
And on June 28th, 1971, same birthday as me, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, me and Elon share the same birthday. Elon Musk was born.
Yes, 9 months and 2 days after the wedding. Pretty weird.
Mm-hmm. Now, during that time, you guys were fairly well off financially.
No, well, look, I started off absolutely at the bottom of the barrel. I had absolutely nothing. When I left university, I had 7 scholarships, but I'd still borrowed some money. Not a lot, but I had to, find a way to pay it back. I was fortunate enough to be employed by a firm of consulting engineers from England, and I was obviously just a junior electrical engineer with them. And at that time, I was about 23, and this firm, very famous firm, they were also doing the opera house in Sydney. So these were big shots, they were from Preston in England. Anyway, they treated South Africa as a sort of second-rate place, which was pretty normal. I mean, the English people, the England officers, officials who came to see us, they always treated us as second-class, sort of second-class people. And anyway, they messed up work they were doing that they'd been granted by the South African government. They treated it totally without interest, and they were actually given marching orders and told, that either they leave the country or they're going to be taken to court by the government here. So they closed their office, and an older man, he was about 10, 15 years older than me. He came to me and he said, look, because I'd liked this kind of work, and he said, why don't he and I take over this practice? So I said, well, really? And then he said, yes. So we got together, we found a way to do it. It cost us at the time, in today's money, it cost us about $12,000. But in today, that was in 1972. It was a lot of money. You could buy a lot of things with $12,000 in 1972. And that's what we had to pay for the library. And so you can add a couple of noughts behind that, And anyway, we went on, and I really got into this. I found it was work that I did very well. And after a while, the older man said he couldn't take the stress of not knowing when they're going to be paid. We are going to be paid, because you didn't get paid on a regular basis. And he asked if he could leave. So I said, all right. So he left, and I continued in the practice. So within 2 years, I bought my first aeroplane, and all that sort of thing. I was able to marry May. I took her on honeymoon to Europe. I was really doing well. I was able to marry her for the first time, because I was earning a lot of money as a consulting engineer, and it just got more and more. So, within about 5 years, I actually bought the home of I bought one of the 5 finest homes in the city. And that home today is home to the European ambassador to South Africa. It was, a little while ago, it was also the headquarters of the United Nations for the Southern Hemisphere. So that home I bought when I was about 26, 27. And so it gives you some idea that I was doing pretty well. And yeah, really well. But like Elon, but in a smaller way.
So you were married for 10 years, and in 1980, you got divorced.
That's right.
From your point of view, what caused the divorce?
Well, we were at the time as it happened, on the top of the social, financial, political. I had become a city councillor of the capital city as an English-speaking person, the only English-speaking person on the council. In fact, for about 40 years or something. I was always the one who was in the news, because they could never get comments from these Afrikaans or South African Dutch people, councillors. And so we were at the top of the social, political, financial, I suppose. We really had everything that you could buy at that point. And of course, people get a little blasé as they go along, take things for granted. And I imagine that's what happened. I really have no real clue. I was in Cape Town at the time. I wanted to have a house in every city in South Africa. So I had a bush farm, and I had the house in Pretoria, the house in Natal, the house in Plettenberg Bay, and I wanted a house in Cape Town, sort of like we could move around to these different houses. And I was in Cape Town with my 2 sons, and Elon and Kimball, and then I got this notice that she wants to be divorced. So I agreed, and we actually, because I was very connected at that time with the judges and everybody, I had them instead of in 6 months or something, I had them put the divorce onto the roll on the following week. So we were on the roll in the following week and officially divorced the following week. 1 week.
Well, your ex-wife, May, she wrote a book.
Yeah, the book's rubbish.
In the book, she claimed you were abusive. No, she said at one point you pulled a knife on her, and she had to run to her neighbor's house to run away from you and the knife. No. You know what I'm talking about, though.
No. I saw this. First of all, let me say that we've been divorced for 44 years, and we've been to many functions together. We even lived in LA for 2 years, near her, or rather not near her, but she was often in LA. So we had lots of Thanksgivings and stuff like that together, and nothing of the kind was ever mentioned. About 4 years ago, I would say, she started coming up with this kind of thing. So it was mentioned to me. I never bought her book, and it was mentioned to me by people, and particularly one was a reference that was made about my daughter saying something. So I sent a note to my daughter, what is this about? And my daughter said, no, it's just the media that's doing this. So then I wrote a letter to my daughter. I said, please ask your mother why she's saying these things, if she's saying these things, because I don't understand, and why she did it, because we never had any problems and of that kind. And I never got a reply. But my daughter replied again and said, Dad, don't worry, it's just the media. The thing is, I don't know, it really attempts to trash me, but it doesn't work. It hasn't worked. And so I don't know what the reason is. I mean, I have no idea, woman or woman. But I did then do something else. I got hold of my partner well, he wasn't a partner in my engineering practice. About halfway through, about mid-70s, I started doing property development. In other words, where you buy land and you put up you appoint all the people and you put it up, the building and all that. So I had a partner to do that with. He's been living in Atlanta for the last 40 years. And for 5 years, him and I did this work before 5 or 6 years before he decided to take the money we made and immigrate to America. Irving Jacobson is his name. And recently, or a while back, I said to him, this is what May's saying, because he was with us every single day. May used to come to work not to work with me, but she would come to my office every day. And so with Irving and me, we would go out to lunch more or less nearly every day and so on. So I asked Irving for his opinion. So he wrote a letter to my children, Elon, Kimmel, and Tosca. And I can read you the letter if I have a moment. But he said that in all the time that he was with us, which was in our professional capacity and also in our social capacity, because we often went out together as a foursome with his wife, he never saw anything abusive, anything ugly of any kind whatsoever. I forget his exact words. In fact, he said quite the opposite. He said, May wanted to be with me in everything that I did. So that completely, just throws this whole thing out the window. And I sent it to my children. And I can't explain woman, but it's totally untrue what she's saying, totally. And Isaacson put it in this book of his. It's a junk book that it's not worth reading. Not only the stuff on me, the rest of the book's full of faults and errors. It's not accurate.
Well, yeah, they say hell hath no fury, like a woman scorned.
I never scorned her. People said to me, funnily enough, women said to me, you know why she's upset? I said, I don't know why. She said, she wanted you to fight for her and not just grant her a 1-week divorce. I said, really? I thought she wanted a divorce. Yeah. No, you should have fought and cried and fought for her and everything. You didn't do that. And instead, you just went and got the divorce. So I said, oh, well, I haven't thought of that before. It's ridiculous.
So after the divorce, Elon lived with you initially?
Yes, she left me with the 2 boys. We had 2 complete homes running with servants at the time. So we had 2 setups. So the servants in one home thought we lived there, and the servants in the other home thought we lived there. So she went to our other home, which is about 400 miles away in Natal, and she moved there when we split up. She took my daughter, and my son stayed with me. And then after a few months, she came to me and said she misses the boys. And so I said, well, against my family's wishes, my mother said I shouldn't do it. But I also felt that in the type of work I was doing, I always had to be all over the country. And I was often flying my own private twin-engine airplane away to places with very little contact with where I was from. We didn't have cell phones in those days. And so I would have to get other people to take care of my sons. And they were quite small still, 8 and 7, 9 and 8 sort of thing. So I decided, let them rather go and be with her. So, so I said, okay, that's fine. So they went to stay with her. And about 10 months later, although I saw them in the holidays, when the school holidays came, they came up again to me because I'd bought a horse stud near Johannesburg. And it was fun there. And they could ride their motorbikes that I'd bought them and so on. And they came up all the time. And then Elon came about 10 months later. I just got a note on my desk saying Elon will be on the overnight train from Durban, which is 400 miles away. Sending a 9-year-old on a train overnight, not a very good idea. But anyway, the next morning I went to the train. I don't know who left me the note, but I went to the train station and there he was. And so he continued with me. And contrary to what he has said, I think, friends, in the second book written about Elon called Risking It All, the author interviews a number of Elon's friends of that time. And in this book, this author, Michael Flismus, says how the friends described how happy Elon was and how happy they all were, because with the horses that we had, the motorbikes, and all the things we had on the, this farm, as we called it, the boys would come for weekends. His friends would come for weekends, and they would have really a very good time, because there was only me and nobody to tell them they can't have what they want. So they, it was burgers and steaks galore, and you name it, on weekends. That was the easiest way for me to deal with them.
Well, there was a story you told when Elon was 9. You took him to a party, and the host got up and threw towels at everyone and said, "We're all getting naked. We're all jumping in the pool."
Yes. I got this invitation from a very well-known South Africa, Johannesburg businessman, who was a very wealthy man, and he was the sort of guy, if he invited you, you couldn't say I'm not coming. But anyway, he invited me to a meal on a week in the evening, and I said to him, look, I've got my son to pick up from school. So Elon was alone with me at the time, so before Kimball came, and because Kimball came shortly after Elon. I said, I have to bring him, I can't bring anybody. So I took Elon to this party, and it was lavish as usual. And the in thing at the time was jacuzzis. And it was like a craze that everybody had to have one of these things. And he'd had one put into his giant house. And after the meal, he threw towels at everybody and said, okay, it's jacuzzi time, you see. So, there were probably about 10, 12 people, I'm not sure how many, including me and Elon. And I saw it was what happened. I of course, steered Elon, who was not interested at all, and took him to this chap had a fantastic library, real library in his own home, and with a sliding ladder, the works. And put Elon in the library, and, promptly, then I went off to the jacuzzi party, and promptly everyone, men and women, stripped naked and jumped into this giant jacuzzi. And so it was kind of funny, if you know what I mean. It was unusual, but it's difficult to say, if people are very prudish, but it was good fun. There was nothing ugly, nothing ugly took place. So it was a bit odd, though, for the time.
Well, when Elon was 10, he started getting into computers.
11.
And
10, yes, 10.
11?
10.
Okay. And about a year or two later, he actually made his first game called Blastar.
That's right.
And he actually sold it.
Yes.
For $500.
Actually, in today's money, I'd say we sold it for about, we got at the time what we got and what would it be worth today, more like $1,400 we would have got in today's money. So, they gave him a good price for it, I would say. And he was into the early computers like some of his friends, but Elon took them very seriously, like Atari, VIC Commodore, VIC-20 Commodore, that sort of thing. These little sort of play computers came out. And then when he was 11, in fact, Elon came to me. He was a tiny little fella. He only grew taller later. And he said to me, he showed me an advert he'd seen in the Sunday Times, which is the local Sunday newspaper. And it was a large advert. And it spoke about teaching people how to use computers. Now, I had done a course in Fortran and COBOL programming on the IBM 360 shortly after I left university. So I was Fortran and COBOL certified by IBM. So I knew what it was. We used punch cards, of course. So anyway, the IBM, of course, 360 would fill an entire house. It's such a big computer. But at any rate, the new computer was coming out, and by IBM. And this advert said that they are advertising a course that they're going to be giving over a period of probably 6 months or something at the University of the Witwatersrand, which was our premier university at the time. People are coming from overseas, England, and they're going to give this course. It was under the auspices of our biggest retailer at the time. It's called the Hyperama, like hypermarkets, you know. And it was 1,500 rand, $1,500. Rand and dollar was the same at the time. So it was $1,500, which is, in today's money, you know, probably about $9,000 or something, if not more. And so I said, whoa, you know, I don't know. So Elon said, no, he really has to see this. He has to go, you know. So I phoned him, immediately said, no children. No, they're not taking any children. He was only 11. So I pleaded with him, and I was able to turn to him and say, sorry, they don't take children. Anyway, he was very upset. And then another ad came out in which they advertised an introductory lecture for $75. Now, that's $75 in 1982. So a lot of money, you can say, in today's money. Anyway, so it's $1,000, let's say, in today's money. He said, can't he go to this? So I called them, and they said no. And then eventually I pleaded with them. They said, right, he can come to the introductory lecture, but he has to wear a jacket and tie, and that wasn't a problem, and long pants. He has to look right, and he has to sit on the side of this huge lecture hall. And so on the due date, I took him. Kimmel had already arrived, and I took Elon we took Elon to this lecture, and we dropped him off. It was a 2-hour lecture, and after the 2 hours we came back. Everybody came streaming out, but no Elon. So I went into the lecture halls, which I used to know quite well, obviously. And then I found Elon. I looked down in this lecture hall that sort of goes down, and there at the bottom was Elon with his jacket off, his white sleeves of his shirt rolled up and his tie off, talking to some tall men down at the bottom. I went down to the bottom, and as I approached them, the tallest one, as I recall, with a beard and glasses, and he turned to me and said, this boy has to get one of these computers. My first reaction as a South African man was, how much do they cost? You know? And then the head of the Hyperama was there, because I knew him because I'd been designing two of the Hyperamas. So he said to me, Errol, he was a British guy, he said to me, Errol, don't worry, it's very expensive, but we'll give you a discount. So anyway, we bought this thing. It cost $7,800. I got a discount of $400. And so it cost me about $7,400. It was the IBM XTA with a mouse, with a printer, with a PC, keyboard, the works. It was actually a real, you know, PC. And on this thing, he taught himself to program. It was DOS or disk operating system. So for anyone who didn't know what it was, you couldn't really use it. It wasn't usable to the average person, you know. But he taught himself to program on this thing. And after a while, he could really write a program on anything I wanted. So I could describe a situation to him, and he would write up a program. And a while after that, he did this. He called me to the screen and showed me this Blastar game, and where something comes down and you can direct like bullets at it and things like that, and you can shoot them. And then I said to him, oh, that's really cool. And you know, the sort of thing you get in a video arcade later on. And so I sent it to PC Magazine, and they said they'd like to publish it, and they would pay him for it. And so he received the equivalent of about, let's say, $1,500 in today's money. And yeah, and I kept it for many years. He forgot all about it. I actually sent it to him, the page from the magazine. I sent it to him about 4 or 5 years ago, saying, do you remember this? And because I'd kept it myself all the years, he'd sort of forgotten about it. And that's what brought it to the fore, so that people started seeing this program, you know. And you could actually use the program. You could enter it into your computer, and you could use it. Yeah.
Well, in 2021, Elon hosted Saturday Night Live, and he mentioned that he has Asperger's, which is a type of autism.
Yeah.
Were you aware of this at all? And has he actually been diagnosed with Asperger's, or this is just a self-diagnosis?
Well, you know, I don't know if he had some sort of diagnosis, but as a young boy, it's not only him, it's me and my brother. A couple of the people in the family are a bit like that. Once we focus on something, it's difficult to get our attention. And so we sort of cut the world out. He was very much like that. And when he was in grade 2, I think he also called it grade 2. When he was in grade 2, he was about 8 or something, 7 years or 8 years old. The headmaster of the school phoned me and said he needs to see me, so I realized, oh boy, it's about Elon. Elon had this knack of telling older people who queried anything he was doing, because he would often read books that were very thick, and adults might say to him, what, are you reading that, or don't you look at the pictures or something? And then he'd say to the adult, well, no, of course not, stupid. I read this book, I had to sort of discipline him a bit on that kind of thing. Anyway, I thought, oh my God, he's told the teacher's stupid or something. So I went to the school, with trepidation. And when I went into the headmaster's office, there was this older lady, I think she was obviously the teacher, wringing her hands, and looking terribly unhappy. And the headmaster was a very good man. And I sat down, I said, what is the problem? And he said to me, it was, of course, what year would that have been? About 1979 or somewhere there, or something to that effect. I mean, they didn't mince words in those days. He said to me, your son is retarded. We think your son is retarded. So I thought, oh, wow. I was glad he wasn't saying something else. Anyway, of course, I knew Elon wasn't retarded. So I said, well, why? Why do you say that? And they said, well, and then the teacher took over and she said, well, yesterday, again, he sits and stares out of the window while everybody's taking note in the class, the other kids are taking note. He sits and stares out of the window. A very leafy suburb that we lived in. And she said, nothing she does gets his attention. And she actually went up to him, as she explained, and she would pushed him on the shoulder before he would jump around and look at her. And then she said, what? He asked him, why, what are you doing? And he said, look, the trees are getting green, or they're all getting leaves or something to that effect. So I thought, well, that's a reasonable, I didn't see anything wrong with that. But they figured there's something wrong with him. And of course, that ties in with a certain amount of, I suppose you could call it a sort of autism. Today, for example, with Elon, even today, it's quite a handy thing. It's very difficult to actually upset Elon, because you can often say something to him which is rude, and it just bounces off him. He doesn't even listen. It doesn't penetrate. It's a sort of handy trick to have. Anyway, the thing is, what I did was I went back. I said at that meeting with the headmaster, I wasn't sure what to say, and then finally we were all wondering what are we going to do, and then the headmaster said, perhaps he can't hear properly. So we all jumped on that. I jumped on that. Oh, yes, I'll take you for hearing tests the next day, which I did. And of course, there's nothing wrong with his hearing. And I moved into another school, a private school. That was a government school, which was a very good government school. But I moved him to a private school, and we never had any more problems. But he is someone that would probably qualify for a certain amount of an inability to, or rather the other way around, that once he gets focused on something, you don't easily get him distracted. If you know what I mean, he will focus on that to the point of cutting you out or anything around him out. And that's true. I didn't even know what Asperger's was when I heard about this. I looked it up and said something about focusing intensely on a subject or something like that.
Well, when Elon was in high school, there was a situation where he got into an argument with one of the kids. And I guess the kid's father had just committed suicide.
That's right.
And I guess Elon had called him stupid or something of that sort. And the kid pushed him down some concrete stairs. And I guess him and the kid and his friends ended up beating up Elon pretty badly. That's
right.
Now, was he hospitalized from that situation?
Yes, he was very severely injured. It was only the little kid. The little kid was a tough little guy, I suppose you could say. I wouldn't say tough, but I mean, he wasn't thin. He was a stocky little bloke, a chap. He was the only one who he took a log or something and started hitting Elon's head with it or something. And at the bottom, because Elon was basically knocked out from falling down these concrete stairs. And, he pushed Elon when Elon wasn't looking. And so Elon was in hospital for 10 days. And the thing is, again, Elon, when this kid was obviously totally traumatized about his father. I only heard this from the headmaster of the school. And the headmaster told me the kid was terribly traumatized. And Elon had said, when it had been mentioned, I suppose, at the school, that your father was stupid, which is reasonable under certain circumstances to say, but certainly not under those circumstances. I mean, his father was probably, shouldn't have done that. But, you know, anyway, the thing is, under the circumstances, I went to the police and everything. I wanted some sort of reckoning. But when I saw the situation, and when I saw the little boy that had done this, who never stopped weeping all the time, I saw him. I realized there's nothing we can do here. And so I dropped it, and I decided to move to another city. I had to move to another city, Pretoria. We were in Johannesburg or Sandton at that time. So I moved to I bought a home in another city, kept the home in Sandton. I had to buy another home to take Elon to a school like that would work for him, called Pretoria Boys High. And after that, there were absolutely no problems at all. And the headmaster of that school, when this bullying stuff came out, wrote a letter saying there's no such thing. They don't allow bullying at that school. But on the other hand, boys teasing and fighting with each other, that's something totally different. You know, and you'll never get that out of boys. So, you know, but actual bullying where a big boy tackles a harmless little boy, I haven't seen, that's nonsense.
Well, the story gets a little fuzzy when he gets out of the hospital. According to him, he said that you screamed at him for an hour. You know, he said, I had to stand for an hour as my father yelled at me, called me an idiot, and told me that I was just worthless.
No. Obviously, that's not true. That may be his interpretation or something. No. Obviously, I'm his father, you know. I'm concerned about him. I'm concerned about what happens to him in the future, what happens to him now. When I see the situation, I'm not a coddler. I'm not going to coddle him. I'm going to say, what happened here? He tells me what happened. I say, you know, I have to teach him. My job is to teach. And so I wouldn't have said to him, he's an idiot. That's ridiculous. I mean, that's absolutely stupid. I would never have done that. But I would have said to him, you shouldn't have done what you did. And this is not right. You have to be careful with people. You can't, you know, in today's world, I can imagine in today's world, it's so rough here in South Africa that, you know, my lady friend here was attacked by a man with a knife 4 days ago where we live, you know, with a knife in her side. This is here just 4 days ago. This is a rough place. And I said, you know, sometimes you might say to somebody that they're stupid or swear at them or raise your fist at them, might just put a knife in you, you know. So, you know, people are, you know, with the breakdown of sort of law and order in the world, I mean, you have to be careful. Anyway, the point is, at the time, I would certainly not have done that. I was shocked, of course, and he had 10 days of recuperation where we visited him every day. There wasn't a possibility of saying anything to him in the beginning. Eventually, when he got home, I would no doubt have said to him, look, you have to be careful with these kind of things that you're saying. You can't do that. You know, and oddly enough, even in America in the last few years or since the beginning, I've cringed when Elon has called people douchebags. You know, I mean, in this country, if you call somebody a douchebag, it's very, very likely, to his face, that he's going to plant 5 fingers in your nose. You follow me? And you're not going to look the same afterwards. So that's South Africa. I don't know what it is there. And in this country, that's called retribution. The police will walk away from it. Because when you tell the police, this man called me a douchebag, or something like that, you're fully entitled to return that with a punch in the nose. And yeah, you have to be careful what you say. Recently, Elon made another terrible thing to say, that he will not let anybody stop the H-1B visas. He will fuck them in the face. What the hell? You can't talk like that. Who talks like that? That's crazy talk. So he's still a little childish.
I remember that tweet he was actually quoting a line that Tom Cruise said in Tropic Thunder.
Oh, all right then, fair enough.
It's like one of these kind of geeky movie references, basically.
Okay, all right, fine.
Yeah,
then
so
I'm
Tom
sorry,
Cruise
I
was like
apologize.
yelling, he's like, "I'll fuck you in your fucking face," and something like that. So Elon was quoting that. But I can see how
I still
it would
don't
come
think,
about, you know.
I don't think that's language that should be used by a person who's even in the remotest level of authority. So I don't agree with that. And and if you do that kind of thing, and you do that to people's face, you must expect the consequences. You must expect the consequences.
Well, yeah, I remember watching an interview with your other son, Kimball, and he was saying that around this time in South Africa, it was extremely dangerous. He was saying how some of the black groups were sort of at war with each other, where he was like, I think on a train or a bus, and one just walked up to another and just stabbed him, I think, in the head, to the point where blood just squirted all over the floor. And he said he still remembers how sticky the blood was as he was trying to walk off the train. So it was, you know, when you talk about how violent it was, I don't think people really realize how violent it really was in South Africa during that era.
Yes, yes. You know, there are 11 different groups of black people in South Africa. And so when South Africa was under apartheid and they were starting to, and during the time that Elon and Kimball would have been young men, youths at that time, these groups were at odds with each other. They didn't all agree on, you know, they weren't one voice against, let's say, the white government. They were at odds with each other, you know, a lot. I mean, they had been for centuries foes. So, for example, the Zulus and the Xhosas are like what you call total foes. They're not, to this day. I mean, if you go to the parties in this country, the political parties, the MK is all Zulus, and the ANC is all Xhosas. And so it goes, you know, so Xhosas are the biggest group. And so you've got these different groups, and that would have been, I wouldn't call it normal, but we did have a lot of that kind of thing. You know, as I say, 4 days ago, a black man put a knife in the side of the lady in my life. She's 37. As she got into her car, a 10-inch knife was pressed into her side, demanding her goods, her things. She actually fought back, which was really stupid. And it was severely cut, and she's got her arm in bandages at the moment. But they managed to get away with all her things. So anyway, there were two of them. Yeah.
I mean, around that time, it seemed like the world was really against the apartheid in South Africa. I remember there was a song called Sun City that came out. You know what I'm talking about, right? Where it was just a bunch of big artists that basically were saying, we're not going to play at this big, event center called Sun City in South Africa because of the apartheid. And that's when I first started noticing how, you know, what was really going on over there. Like, from your point of view, did you feel like apartheid was going to actually survive, or was it kind of on its way out during this time?
Well, yes, your first point, I went to Sun City a lot, and at least every month an international star came. So I can tell you, I saw all of them, nearly all of them, Frank Sinatra, Anne Margaret, Lisa Minnelli, Queen, Rod Stewart, Julio Iglesias. I mean, just list goes on and on. There didn't seem to be any hesitation to come and perform at Sun City. So I'm not sure about that. Some people may have objected. I don't know.
Did you feel, I mean, at the point where there's now hit songs about apartheid in South Africa, did you feel like apartheid was going to survive for the next few decades?
Right. Okay. In 1976, we had riots in South Africa, which were later termed the Soweto riots, where African children in their thousands, apparently, or hundreds, refused to be taught, said they don't want to be taught in the Afrikaans language, the Dutch language. They wanted to be taught in English. And these riots resulted in injuries, and one, I think, child was killed, Hector Peterson, and the day is actually named after him now, the day annually to this day. Anyway, I was interviewed by, the CBS came to South Africa at that time and wanted to interview all the people that were involved in running South Africa. And one of the things they did is they went to see the youth of the Pretoria black community called Mamelodi, and the youth leader there was Andrew Masambuka, and he referred CBS to me and asked CBS to come and see me. CBS interviewed the ministers and the prime minister and the head of the Brotherhood of Afrikaners and all sorts of things. But CBS interviewed me in my home in 1976. And they asked me the same question: do you think that South Africa will continue? And I said, the way I see it, we will continue like this at least for 25 years, which would have put us at about the year 2000. I remember saying that to them, and they were critical of my observation. Of course, they were right. I was not right. And then I also said, we have gold until another 25 years. I was really not that old myself. I was still a youth, you might say, so I wasn't really too knowledgeable. But anyway, the thing is, it all really came down much sooner than that. And but as the 80s progressed, in 1985, the president, he'd become the president. They changed the name from prime minister to president. I knew him quite well, the president, P.W. Botha, and he made a speech in which he said that South Africa will never have a black government, ever. And this was in response to much pleading from the international community. And the result of that was massive sanctions against South Africa. And so from 1985 onwards, the situation in South Africa became extremely difficult for people like me who were doing property development. So any form of speculation in South Africa started to just fall to pieces. People who had previously worked in jobs where, it was based on future earnings and all that sort of stuff, were just leaving the country. They just had to. There was no future. There was no hope. In my own case, my work came to a dead stop. White people started moving to trailer parks. Proper white, decent white people to go and live in tents in trailer parks because they just couldn't survive. They couldn't live in their homes anymore. They had to rent their homes out and so on. And I remember in my case, I had a very large propeller-driven plane, twin-engine plane called a Cessna Golden Eagle. And I decided I'll try and sell it. I couldn't sell it in South Africa. So I set off to sell it in England because I was told if I can get it there, if it has full de-icing, they'll buy it. And I set off, and halfway there, I landed at Lake Tanganyika, and I met a Panamanian company that was building roads for the Zambian government, or an airfield and roads. I landed on that airfield on the lake itself, and they saw the airplane. They said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to sell it." They said they'll buy it from me and at the same price. And I was amazed. And I said, "Okay, well, great." And they paid me the same price. And then the next day or so, they said to me, if I would like to give them half the money back, they'll introduce me to, they'll help me with a supply of gemstones, in this case emeralds. And with those, I was able to get into that business, and I managed to turn it into an income-producing business, for the next 5 years.
Because so I guess that you had co-owned or owned shares in 3 Zambian emerald mines?
Well, look, they had a mine, and the arrangement was that they started off by giving me about 118 cut emeralds. These are the best emeralds in the world. They are the Zambian emeralds, the best color you can get. Sorry, I'm just doing some sales here. Sales. No, they're the best emeralds you can get. And the Colombian ones are a little yellow, and the other places are a little this and a little that, but the Zambian ones are a deep green. And the arrangement was they would provide me with rough on a regular basis after that, as and when they, nothing firm. It's all a handshake. And, that's how it was in Africa, really. And paperwork didn't mean much. And I became very friendly. I'm still very friendly with them. The main man unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, but I'm still friendly with his wife. She's in her 80s now. And so they sent me rough on off and on. And then I would, I employed a cutter in Johannesburg at the diamond. We cut a lot of diamonds in Johannesburg in the main street. So I went to see a cutter there, and I started employing him to cut the stones for me and start selling them on my own like that, And so I did this for quite a long time. And I was able to really, I suppose, make 4 times as much as I would have by just selling the plane, you know.
Well, this is where the story gets a little fuzzy, because Elon said that you never owned any emerald mines.
Well, yeah, you know, that sort of story came out somehow because people were saying he didn't make himself, he didn't get success on his own in America. He had this big start, and that's not true. So the start, what we got out of the emeralds, I was a wholesaler. Now I would sell it 7 times what it cost, you know, let's say what the base cost would be of the ore. So my markup was quite small, but it suited me because I would sell to the upper-end jewelers. The upper-end jewelers would sell it anything from 20 to 25 times what they paid me. You follow? So, you know, I took a stone that I sold to Tiffany's in New York. There were 2 I sold to them. Elon and Kimball, as I recall, took the stones there first. But anyway, I sold one for $800 to Tiffany's. They said, and the other one was $1,200. They said we should come back and see them mounted. A few days later, I went back and they showed me the $800 stone mounted. And it was in the cabinet for sale. And I've often asked, the average person doesn't quite get it, but jewelers will give you the right answer. I said, how much do you think they wanted for it? Well, they wanted $21,500 for it. $21,500. So that's different. My income from the emeralds was sustained us. It just sustained us through difficult times, and it wasn't like we were high-end jewelers or anything like that. It's like anybody who has a diamond claim somewhere. You know, that doesn't mean they're just finding diamonds every day. Might find one a year.
Well, Elon graduates, and he first goes to the University of Pretoria, but then he moves to Canada.
Yes, no. He went to the University of Pretoria. I suggested he go to the University of Cape Town, which seemed more glamorous at the time. And he said to me, no. I took him to the University of Cape Town. He had a look at it. He said, no, he may as well go to the university, which is bicycling distance from our home in Pretoria at the time. And so he started the Pretoria University, and the year went all right. But towards the middle of that year, one day we were due to go out for a meal. It was a holiday, Republic Day, and we were due to go out for a lunch with people. And I said, where's Elon? Kimball said, no, he's in bed. It was 11 o'clock or so. I went up, and there he was lying in bed, you know. And so I pulled him on his big toes. I pulled him out of bed, and he sat on the edge of the bed, and he looked terribly dejected, you know. And I said to him, it's not working for you here, is it? You know, the university and everything. His marks were good and everything. He was studying economics. And I said to him, as I leaned against his desk, and I said to him, things are not working out for you, are they? You're not feeling good. He said, no, they're not working out for me. And then something jumped into my head, just like that. Something jumped into my head, and I said, would you like to go and study in the United States? You see? And he just changed instantly. And yes. He didn't even hesitate, you know, yes. And so I said, right, let's do that. So suddenly he was energized, and I was in Rotary, and one of the United States consulate people was the commercial affairs attaché, and I said to him, I arranged for Elon to go and see him and get books on what universities he could go to in America the next day. And off he went. That was on the 31st of May. And he came back with all these places. We saw that the most reasonable university in America was the University of Texas. So we sort of focused on that one. And so on the 11th of June, 11 days later, Elon left on a return ticket that I got for him, and with some cash. And we started him off with May's uncle and aunt in Montreal. And we gave him various friends' addresses and places, and gave him the sort of 5-stop ticket so he could go to different places and meet the people, and off he went. Now, he'd been overseas with me at least, by that time, he'd been overseas with me at least, I'd say 6, 7, 8 times. So he'd been to America with me before. And he'd been right through America. He'd been to about 18 states with me in America before. Been right through Europe. He'd seen most of the capital cities of the world by the time he was probably 12 to 15. So he wasn't new to traveling. And so off he went, and I was happy with him. I knew that he was quite capable. And so off he went. And he phoned me. We had made an arrangement to phone every Thursday evening at a certain time. We didn't have cell phones. It was all booked calls. So if you wanted to make a call, you had to sort of book it, reverse charges call. And so this happened. And then he told me he's decided to, he likes Canada, which is where he stopped in the first place. He's going to visit other relatives and so forth. And he's thinking that he might not start in the new year, which was September. He might just keep on having a look around first. So he spent the first year looking around and actually got a job with the Bank of Nova Scotia at one point in Toronto. And, I went through regularly to see him and so on, took the other kids, or took Kimmel with me. And a year later, he then enrolled at Queen's University in Kingston in Canada for an economics degree.
Right, but then he transferred to the University of Pennsylvania.
Yes, after a short time, I got a note from him. He used to contact me quite regularly. He said that, and I went over quite regularly, taking what cash we weren't allowed to take money out of South Africa. It was against the law. So what I would do is I would take someone with me and get their maximum business allowance, and we take this money, my business allowance, the other person's business allowance, and then I'd be able to give them that cash to sort of get by on there and to help them with. And and then he let me know that Wharton, I'd never heard of Wharton at the time, but he told me it's a very big, important school of law, business, and they've given him offered him a scholarship. So I said, oh, well, that's cool. So off he went, and the next thing he was at Wharton. So the next place I went to visit him at was actually at Wharton. Yeah.
Well, as he's going to Pennsylvania around that time, Mandela is getting out of prison, and South Africa completely changes. No?
Yes. No, that's right.
Around,
around
1990.
No,
right?
sorry, you're quite right. Carry on.
Yeah. So 1990, Mandela gets out of prison, and then he gets elected as the first black president of South Africa. And how massive a change was this in South Africa?
Well, it was very harsh. The white people, didn't have much faith in black people running the country, And we'd also seen, what happened to Rhodesia, which is today a completely defunct, destroyed country that doesn't exist. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's not an existing country. It's not a functioning country. That's Rhodesia. It's the next country up. And so the white people here were terrified of what this meant. And, in the beginning, we actually, through Mandela, keeping many of the existing government structures in place, things weren't that bad, but people had no faith in things getting better, and so people were very, very worried, and everybody, May and her whole family left the country. Everybody in her family left the country. May and her whole family, they all left the country. My partner had left the country much earlier before, but nearly everybody we knew who could leave left the country. And so, it was not good. It was not great. And I, who had been a consulting engineer and had been consulting engineer on pipelines and transmission lines up to 188,000 volts, I was a consulting engineer on Sun City. I'd been a consulting engineer on the biggest shopping center. I was actually one of the four owners of it in the country. I was reduced to fixing axles and drive shafts and greasing cars and stuff. That was my job. I started greasing motorcar wheels and fixing drive shafts and fixing rubber boots on drive shafts and stuff like that. That's what I did. Me and another black man.
Well, I remember one of the things that Mandela said when he first took power was that he didn't want black people to take revenge against the white people of South Africa. He wanted a society where everyone coexisted. Was that actually the case, though?
Did he actually say that? I mean,
Yeah, he said
well,
that.
yeah, look, I wouldn't have, that would have been very bad for the black people, you know. The white people are not pussies in this country, you know. The white men in this country are serious, if you understand what I mean. We wouldn't have wanted something like that to happen. It would have been a terrible thing to happen, you know. It's not like we would all run away, you know. It was 450 white men and women who defeated 10,000 Zulus at the Battle of Blood River and left 6,000 of them dead, you know. So, and not one injury to a white person. So no, the white people, that's a good thing it didn't, because it would have been stupid. But it was a very nice thing for Mandela to try and say to people. On the other hand, they did start going into gangs of, you know, blacks did start going into white people's homes and just shooting them in their beds, and, you know, here and there, you know, they came into my home on one occasion, 7 or 8 of them, and, you know, I dispatched 3 of them to the next world, and then the rest ran away. But they fired 52 rounds at me.
I want to go deeply into the story here, since you.
Yes, they fired 52 rounds at me. I fired 2 rounds. Sorry?
Okay, so let's go ahead and have the setting. So this was at night. You're at home asleep in your house?
No, I had a home. The home on the horse stud that we had, I still kept it all the years, and I was renting it out, and I was living in Pretoria. By that stage, I had a new child. She was 6 years old, Alexandra. She now lives in Texas, in Austin. And I went over with her when she was 6 years old to see how the house looked, because it's a big house, and I painted it out, you know, with some sort of white paint and stuff. And I went to see how the painters were getting on. It was 5 o'clock or so in the evening. Got there, the painters were about leaving, and we had a look at the house. We luckily put on all the lights, and then the painters left. And my daughter said we used to live there for a while, and my daughter said she'd like to have a bath in the main bathroom. So I ran a bath for her, and then I heard some noise in the lounge area, and I went up to the lounge. This was probably about 6 o'clock in the evening in about March, so dusk, not nighttime, not daytime. And there were a bunch of black men in the lounge. And my initial thought was, I had an electric fence around the property. And my initial thought was, how on earth did they get through the electric fence? Because I built that fence myself. And then I thought maybe they want to rent. So I said, can I help you? And the lead one, who had a jacket and tie on actually, raised his left arm towards me, and thought he wanted to shake hands or something. But he immediately fired a gun at me. You know, the sparks, I just saw the sparks my way. I could have moved, I don't know what I did, but it didn't hit me. It hit a glass door behind me and shattered the door. And then I realized, I suppose, and then all happening very quickly, I ran back down to the bathroom in the main bedroom where I'd left. We always carried a weapon. In fact, I still carry a weapon. And it's a Magnum, so I carried a 357 Magnum, and I went to the bathroom where I'd put it on a shelf when I ran the bath, away from my daughter, grabbed the Magnum, and as they came down the passage, they were coming down the passage, I stood at the entrance, the main bedroom entrance to the passage, and I took the one in front out, you know, with a bullet through the head, and that bullet actually went into the one behind him as well. And then they ran back. And then a while later, when we were like in a standoff situation, I looked again, and there was another one on his knees waiting for me to look out. And as I looked out, we both shot at the same time. I shot him in the groin. I saw the bullet go into his groin because I was right behind the bullet. And he fired at me, and it would have hit me in the middle of my chest, but it actually went into the aluminum frame of a sliding door that was between me and him, or you know, a folding door, and so I would have been killed. But anyway, he disappeared. We were able to. They'd fired 52 shots. The police collected all the shells that they fired. I fired from a revolver, no shells. I only fired 2 shots, and yeah, the house was a wreck. But my daughter and I were able to escape through a window in the main bedroom that had been completely shot out. So we were able to jump through that into the garden and escape, a picture window out into the garden and escape. And yeah, so that was that.
So you ended up killing 3 people.
Well, yeah, I'm not proud of it. I mean, I didn't intend to. You know, they tried to kill me. So, you know, they wound up dead, 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean, I've told the story before. I had a home invasion happen to me many years ago, and I thought I'd killed the home invader. He ended up surviving, but I remember, you know, the thought process I had during that time with the adrenaline. The first thing I thought was good riddance, because I felt he was trying to kill me. So
yes.
I did what I had to do. So
yes.
I felt no guilt whatsoever about the
I
situation.
don't feel guilty.
He ended up surviving. But did you feel any guilt at all or no?
Well, you know, I do. I mean, not guilt, but I mean, I look back and I think, you know, I was very sad when I saw the police going through the pockets of these deceased men and taking out their little notes and things. And you know, I felt, well, you know, these were people, you know, it was terrible. And so I wasn't proud of it, but what could I do? It was me or them, you know. My daughter's head would be hanging from a taxi at this moment, you know, dangling from a taxi if I'd let them get their way. My 6-year-old daughter's head would be dangling from a taxi. So, a mirror, you know. No. So, because they eat them and they use the children as medicine, you know. What do you call it? Medicine.
Wait. They actually eat children and use their body parts as medicine?
Yes, they take the body parts and then well, we know this. I mean, it's not me. I mean, I won't say everybody, you know, maybe things are improving, but it's called muti, M-U-T-I. Then they make muti out of the people's bodies, you know, and then they believe that if you have this muti thing, you know, you'll have good luck and all that sort of stuff. You know, it's not new. I think it's been in human existence among groups of people for a long time, that type of thing, you know. I mean, we're not talking about Oxford University professors here, you know.
Yeah, I actually looked it up as you're talking. Yeah, the Muti murders from South Africa. It's like a witch doctor kind of thing.
Yes.
Oh.
So my daughter, they would have probably just killed me, but they would have used her for muti, you know, her body parts. So yeah, so that's not nice to think of. But anyway, you know, just one of those things. I mean, you know, as it happened, I had stables on that property, 12 stables, which had been turned into rooms by a local restaurant for their workers. And all those workers came up and stood guard around my house, all black guys, came up and stood guard around my place after the event, because they said in case they should come back for revenge, you know. And so, you know, all the black guys, not all bad, you know, some of them very nice. And so they helped me, you know, afterwards. In fact, the first people to go into the house and try and see what was going on after all the shooting that I had were black guards, black private police. We had a lot of private police in those days. We still have, you know, like ADT and so on. They went in, they were the first to go in with shotguns to see what was going on. When the actual police arrived, they put on full body armor before they went into the house to see what was going on, you know. I mean, the house was really wrecked. I mean, 52 shots. There was no furniture, but the amount of blood in the house was absolutely enormous. It was as though somebody had emptied, you know, a 44-gallon drum of blood into the lounge. It was just so much blood everywhere. And as my little girl said when she had to walk, I had to walk her over or carry her over it. She said, so much blood, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you got through that. Could have ended very differently.
Yeah.
Well, in 1992, you were 46 years old at the time. You got married for the second time.
Yes.
To 25-year-old Heidi.
Yes, Heida Marie.
Heida, how do you pronounce your last name?
It's a German, Heida Marie. There's a flower.
Heida Marie.
It's a flower in Germany. Heida Marie.
Got it. Okay. Why did you decide to get remarried at that point?
Why did I decide to get married? I was lonely. I was, in fact, I'd set up a big yacht at the time. I bought a 48-foot yacht, a really great yacht, and sailing yacht that I was going to sail to Canada to join the kids because they'd all moved to America. And then I met her, and, one thing led to another, and I decided it was more fun being with her than going off sailing to another country, So I put an end to the sailing, and not totally. I mean, I did go on again later, but and I married, and we had a child, Alexandra, and she's as she describes herself, the favorite child. Of course, they're all favorites, but a beautiful girl, an extremely beautiful girl, and she just left here. She was here until a week ago, and she's at the inauguration yesterday of Donald Trump. Yeah, with Elon at the inauguration.
Well, your second wife, she had a child already when you guys got married.
She had 3 children.
3 children?
Yes.
Okay. And you had how many children at the time, yourself?
Well, I had Elon, Kimball, and Tosca.
So 3.
Yes, and they were all in America by that stage.
Right. It was kind of like the Brady Bunch almost, right?
No, not that many.
Okay, so one of her children, who was 4 years old at the time, was named Jana.
That's right.
Now, later on in life, when Jana was an adult, I guess you were helping her pay her bills and so forth?
No. Hader Marie and I, or Hader is for short, we had a good marriage for quite a long time, but she was much younger than me. And I don't know, it's, like with all relationships, I've become quite impressed when somebody tells me that their relationship lasted 3 years or something, but these days. But at any rate, our relationship, didn't last very long. We were married in 92 and we divorced in 94, 2 years later. And so she went off, she married another man, with the new divorce and marriage laws, it was possible to jump around, as opposed to the times of mine, your parents. At any rate, so she married another man. I went off back to sailing, did all sorts of things. And then I met Hader again in about 99. Met up with her again. Although we had the child, we had a little girl. So I would see occasionally when I was back in South Africa, go and see my daughter Alexandra, who was with her, the mother, her mother. And Ali had grown quite a bit. And then we started seeing each other in about 98, I think, 98. We started seeing each other again. She divorced from that second husband, that third husband that she had. Her first husband was killed in a car crash. And then we decided to get married again. So we got married again. And then Rose was born in 99. So Rosie's now 25. And at that time, her other children that she had been placed with, because she was a woman on her own and didn't have the means. And the man she married was, a very, I'm sure, a very good policeman, but they don't earn a lot of money or anything like that. And so the children were placed in a sort of foster care, her 3 children, And so we got married, and then after we got married and Rose was born, she asked me if we can't bring the children back, her other children, out of foster care, back to join us. So I said, I'll do what I can. And so one by one, by going to courts and making applications and so on, I got all 3 children back, her 3 children. That's 2 boys and a girl. Jana was a girl. And it wasn't shortly after that, in 2002, 2 years after Rose was born, that Elon, I'd been going regularly to the States, and then Elon invited us, said we must come over and meet his new son, that Nevada that he had with his first wife, who was 3 months old. So we went over, and we took everybody, the Rose, Alexandra, and Hader's 3 other children. 5, there were 7 of us, went to America, and on the way, when we landed at Raleigh, the airline came to us and said they need to speak to us, and we went and spoke to them. They told us that Elon's son had died the night before, and that they needed to tell us. So it was terrible, you know. Anyway, we continued and we arrived in LA and everybody was distraught. I mean, it was a terrible time. And, you know, Elon at that point had been renting the penthouse of the Beverly Wilshire, which was a fabulous place to stay. Huge, could take about 4 families. So we all began living in the top floor of the Beverly Wilshire for a while. And then when we were due to leave, Elon and Kimball came to us and said, look, we don't want you to leave. We want you to stay. We don't want you to go back to South Africa. It's too dangerous, which it was. And so after much talking, we agreed to stay with all the children and so forth. And so I started working for, I'll get to the point in a minute. I started working for SpaceX. I was one of the first 9 or so working for SpaceX. They didn't pay me. I just went to do the help to fix things and so forth. And that also took me to the rocket site in Texas a lot. And I was away a lot. And as you probably know in America, if you like your job, you go as early as possible in the morning and you come back at 10 o'clock at night. And you do that 7 days a week, you know. So that's if you like your job. They all seem to like their job terribly. And so my wife, Ada Marie, was very upset. And she said if she has to go on like this, she's going to kill herself. So eventually, cut a long story short, we decided to return to South Africa. So we took all the children, and including Jana, the girl you're talking about, and we all went back to South Africa. We got temporary passports. We didn't let the boys know. And we got in the plane and we flew back. We left everything behind, our home. You know, first we lived in Beverly Hills. Ada didn't like that, so we moved to Malibu. We had 2 acres in Malibu. She didn't like that. So you know, the South African scene is more friendly. You know, people are more sort of at home with each other. In America, people are sort of workaholics, as we found, you know. But at any rate, which is good for America, of course. And so we came back, and we went back 6 months when I thought I was doing the right thing by my wife. Elon and them refused to speak to us. They said, we're done. We're never going to speak to them again because of what we did, because we left the homes, the cars, everything, a boat that I had, everything behind. A big 5-level boat in Marina del Rey. Anyway, so Ada and I decided it's not working. So I could see things were going bad like they had the first time. So I sued her for divorce in 2004. And so within 2 years again, I was divorced again. And she was on her own. I gave her everything we had here. I still had a few houses here. So I gave them to her, all of them, and a couple of houses and a couple of stands, maybe 3 houses and a couple of housing stands and cash and so on. And I just bought a yacht and I set off again on ocean sailing, which I did a lot of, crossed the oceans, you know, sailed to Europe from here, crossed the Atlantic a few times, and so on. And I never saw her or the children again until about 2014. Well, of course, I saw her, my ex-wife, if I came back to South Africa, because I'd go and see my daughters. But that's another story. About 2 or 3 years after we got back, Elon and Kimball said, look, surely you want Alexandra and Rose to be here and not be in America, where they're safer. So we all agreed that and Alexandra and Rose should go back. So Alexandra and Rose went back to school, and then Ellie went on to university in Colorado, and Rose continued at school in Colorado with the boys, which is sort of a family agreement we made. As for Ada's other children, they were growing up, and I never really saw much of them. Then in about 2014, I got a call from, an email from Jana to say that she's having a very hard time. She was now about 28, 29 years old, and she'd already had a child, a little girl of 6 or something, and she can't make it. She's just unable to live and so forth. And the people at the social welfare had taken her child away, and she was living with a man in a storeroom. And so I went to see her, found her, and then saw the terrible circumstances. And I said, well, look, you know, I'm going to give you money for food and toiletries every day. I'll give it to you every day or every week, which I started doing, enough for food and toiletries at first. And then that grew into a little bit more and a little bit more, so that eventually they could live better. And then I got them both a second-hand car, which they could use. And this went on for quite a while. And then in about 2016, I got a call from Jana. I never saw her because we used to send money through the bank, you know. Occasionally might see her, but I mostly didn't go and see her. And then I got this call in 2016 or so from Jana to say that her boyfriend has thrown her out. She's on the street and all her clothes are out on the street and all that sort of thing. And she didn't know what to do. So I said, well, I was living, oh, by the way, Rose had come back because she wanted to do, it was very complicated. She wanted to do her high schooling. She'd finished her primary schooling in Colorado, but she wanted to do her high schooling in South Africa near her mother. Now, her mother lived in a town very close to where I am now, but I had no home. I had no home in South Africa. So Rose, I had to then find a home so that Rose could come back. So in about 2013, I did have this home, which I rented near where her mother lived, and I put Rose in a local school. So that's when Jana contacted me. Jana said she's struggling. She told me what was happening when they threw her out in the street. And then I said, she better come here. Have you still got the vehicle? Yeah, she's got the vehicle. I said, come here. So she brought the vehicle. She arrived here, and she spent the next 3 weeks with us, and with Rose and myself, and we got on really well. She'd grown up into a great-looking woman, and we got on extremely well. And, and then after a while she left us because the boyfriend started crying and coming and lying on our doorstep and so forth, crying through the night and all sorts of things like that. So she decided she'll give this bloke another chance. And so she left. And then 2 months later, roughly 2 months later, she contacted me to say she's pregnant. So I said, well, can't be me. She said, well, it is you, because she hasn't been with anybody else. She went back with this chap, but they're just friends. So I said, well, all right. Well, then I wasn't too happy with that. So I sent blood samples. At that time, you could only do it like that, to Canada, and cryogenically, and they confirmed in Canada that the child was 99.9% mine. So he's now 7, he's nearly 8. He's probably the most smartest boy I've ever known. He's smarter than Elon and Kimball were at that age. And I'm very happy with him, and they live here with me. So they've got a little house. She's got a little house of her own, but most of the time she's here. And so we have 2 children now, actually. We have a little girl as well.
Well, yeah, there's a 42-year age difference between the two.
That's right. They say age is only a number. I don't know. They say I don't look 78. Anyway, I think I look 108.
Well, and a lot of people, they have a problem with this because when she was 4 years old, you were her stepfather, and then you go on to have children with her.
Well, yes, I was her stepfather, but she had 3 stepfathers afterwards. So I was a one-time stepfather. She had 3 stepfathers subsequently. So, I'm not the current. But I mean, all I say is show me the rules. I'd like to see the rules. Please show me the rules. I want to see the rules for love and war. And then if you show me, then I'll apologize. If you can't show me the rules, then don't talk to me. Show me the rules.
Well, what does her mother think of you having 2 kids with her daughter?
Well, oddly enough, her mother and I had been separated for so long, and her mother was married again, to another chap who unfortunately was killed in a car accident last year. I mean, the drama just doesn't end. But at any rate, at the time, she was married. She had no interest at all. And, there was no problem. I think my 2 boys said, Kimmel said, it's nothing, it happens. I mean, he had a child with one of the girls who worked in his restaurants, while he was married. So these kind of things happen, And I think the people who were most sort of surprised were my 2 daughters, Ellie and Rose, because they'd known Jana a little bit as a sort of sister, if you know what I mean. So, but that kind of thing is way long gone with us. Nobody sees it like that anymore, I mean, we've just spent Christmas with the 2 daughters, Ellie and Rose, and Jana, and everybody had came out from Texas. No, just the last couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had Christmas all together. No, it's not a problem at all. And the mother, Hader, she spends, my little fellow goes and spends whenever she can get him. She takes him, to her place, and he goes there, and that's his Omar, and his Omar, as we call it, is what do you call it in your country? It's Omar, grandmother, and so no, there's no trouble at all, nothing at all. We all had Christmas together.
How would you compare your situation with someone like Woody Allen, who ended up marrying his adopted stepdaughter at one point?
Well, there are no rules in love and war, no rules in love and war. I have a friend here who was this little town is full of quite interesting people. It's a lot of sort of wealthy people seem to retire in this particular seaside resort that I'm in. And there was this one chap, and he was married for 30 years to this very beautiful woman that everybody everybody amazed at her beautiful red hair and everything. Better not put any names. And then last year or something, he wound up having an affair with a woman of 20, and she was pregnant, and now he's left his wife, and he's living with a 20-year-old in Cape Town, and he's a friend, so we all everybody's like, ooh, and what can you do? I don't know. The way I understand it, if you can be married, apparently happily married for 20 years or something, walk up to your wife and say, listen, I want out. She can't sue you. She can't do anything. She's going to say yes. If your wife comes to you and says, I'm done, I want out, what are you going to do?
So how many kids do you have right now?
I've got 7. 7 kids. Yeah.
Okay, but didn't you say that there was about 5 other women who claim they have your child as well?
Oh, yeah. No, I've had about 6 women over the last 20 years claim that I'm the father of their child. One went so far as to go to all the newspapers in America and claim that I was her daughter. One of them claimed she was my daughter. That one I had to have DNA testing done to prove that it wasn't the case. But I have other people, and they tell me the timelines, and I explain to them, that's not possible. The timelines are not possible. And so what do you do about it? There's nothing you can do about it. I mean, it's difficult. It's a difficult one. But no, there are no other kids that I know of. But if somebody came to me and said, remember me, we met and we went out for a while or something to that effect, and we made it together a bit or something like that, and I actually have this child and this is who the child is, man, I would grasp that child with everything that I've got. I would take that child. I'd say, listen, lady, you can leave the child here, you can go.
Well, in 1995, Elon moves to California to attend Stanford University, although he never actually went to any of the classes there. And around that time, he co-founded a company called Zip2.
Yes.
With his brother, Kimball. Now, did you give some of the seed money for this company?
Well, what happened was they asked me what money I can give them. And South Africa, as I told you earlier, in 1994, when the ANC took over, let me just say at the moment in South Africa, we don't have a single government department that functions. We have partially functioning government in this country, even to this day. Nothing really functions. So, for example, about the last 18 months, no one could get a passport here. It was almost impossible to get. The Home Affairs doesn't work. And so the banks started issuing passports here with the approval of the central government. I mean, there's no functioning government department in this country. Let's face it, it's no good pretending, things aren't nowhere near what they should be in this country. But at any rate, where was I now? Back in 94, when the ANC took over, I mean, the first thing that happened, I was a city councillor for 10 years in one of the most beautiful buildings. I had my office in the country, probably in the world. In the first year, they burned it down to the ground. This huge magnificent structure was burnt to the ground in the first year, in 95. Anyway, that's typical, you know. Anyway, so Elon wanted to start a business. He said he was going to study, but he thinks he should take advantage of the .com. Of course, I knew nothing about .com, and we didn't have internet or anything in 95 here. And so I said to him, look, I still had the 48-foot yacht. I said, I can sell the yacht. I still had the bush farm. I said, I can sell the bush farm, but I'm not going to get anything like the value. I'm going to get like a third or quarter of the value. In fact, the yacht cost me $400,000, and I sold it for $105,000. And the bush farm was worth about $800,000 at the time. Well, today it would be worth $8 million. But I sold it for $234,000, as I recall. And with that money, I was able to send it to them. And you weren't allowed to send money out of the country. I mean, that was, one of my friends tried that. He got 8 years in prison, and for which he served 4. You know, I mean, a chartered accountant sent to prison for 4 years. Jewish guy. Or 8 years, but he came out after 4 years. And so what I was told is that if you take money to this certain, also as it happened, Jewish people that own this certain franchise, and you give it to them, they send the money somehow through Israel or something to that effect, and then they take a commission, and then you can send this money to your children. So that's what I did. So I went to them and I said, look, I need to send this money to them, and then you don't know what happens to that money, but I would contact them and say, did you get the money? Did you get the money? So what they took off on the money is about a quarter. They took about a quarter of the money. And the exchange rate at the time was not great. So, you know, I probably wound up sending them about $45,000, of which they probably got about $30-something thousand, something like that. But then I also went over there and I would take a business allowance. So I'd give them that as well, you see. And then I bought them a car when I was there. So they had a car for Zip2.
Well, yeah, according to reports, you gave Elon $28,000 to help start Zip2, but Elon said that you never gave him anything.
No, I did. Yeah, and I did give them that. Where the $28,000 comes from, I don't know. But by my reckoning, it was more like, based on what the amount was that they took off, I would think it was more like $32,000. But then I'm not sure, because I had no way of checking. And when I would ask them what money they received, they were too busy to like tell me. But no, I definitely sent them money. Kimball said to me, without that money, they could not have lasted the 6 months that they did, because it was food and rent money. And Kimball said they would never have been able to get through it without that money. So why Elon says that, I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, Zip2 gets acquired by Compaq for $307 million.
Plus stock options of $200 million.
Right. So Elon had 7% of the company, so his share was $22 million.
Yes, that's right.
Did he, you know, with you helping to invest in the company early on, did he give you some of the profits or just a thank you?
They sent me $200,000.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So Elon takes the money from Zip2, and then he co-founds the original X.com,
Yeah.
which in 2000 merges with Confinity to form PayPal. So then PayPal gets acquired by eBay
Yes.
for $1.5 billion.
Yes.
And with Elon being one of the big shareholders, the biggest shareholder actually, he gets $176 million after this acquisition.
Well, yes, you know, around about when they sold Zip2, I went there, and it was interesting because I never thought they'd make any success with it. I thought it was just, you know, waste. My money went as a waste, I thought, to help them. I didn't expect anything. And then I was friendly with the American Air Force liaison officer in South Africa for the American Embassy. And then he was a very nice chap, and he came and said, you know, with his American drawl, he said to me, do you know that company that Elon's got, it's worth $52 million. This was Zip2. I said, what? $52 million? Are you crazy? What are you talking about? He said, yes. And, even then we didn't really have a really functioning internet in South Africa. Anyway, so I went over there. I wouldn't say I shot over there. I went over there a little while later, a few weeks later, trying to find out what's going on. And then I discovered it was actually much, much more than $52 million. But, at the time, when I was there, Elon said to me, how much does it cost you to cash a check? So I said to him, well, I'm not sure, but I think it costs around about R2.50. That's our currency, He said, yes, it's the same here. It's about $1.75 or something to write a check in America, you see. So I said, yeah. And then he said, and this? And I said, well, I think some of those other things you're talking about cost as much as 10 rands. And he said, yes, it costs as much as $7. And he said, but if you do these things through the internet, then these transactions would cost a fraction of a cent. That was what he was saying. So I said, yes. So he said he's bought this X.com for $600,000, paid $600,000 for the domain, which the original guy bought for $39, and wanted $1 million for it, but he got 600. And Elon was going to use this X.com as the name of the bank, so that by that stage I sort of realized, I saw the computer thing, you could just press X and then you'd get straight into X. You just don't have to have anything more. You just type X. And as Elon explained, and then so he's going to start this electronic bank. And, the next thing, one thing led to another, and then it became PayPal. And as you say, they sold it to eBay. I understood for $1.8 billion. And Elon got about 22 and 12. Kimball got 12 and so forth, out of it.
Right. So now Elon is worth $176 million.
Yeah.
And he takes $100 million and puts it into SpaceX.
Well, yes, it wasn't so much that. During SpaceX, PayPal's existence, of course, PayPal today, more than 60% of all transactions on the internet go through PayPal. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely amazing. It's worth more than eBay. So anyway, so he had a row with Peter Thiel and those guys. They thought Elon was too bombastic. Elon figured he could take PayPal to much higher. He could take it into the realms, of $8-10 billion. But they were always like at his throat saying, we're happy with what we've got and so forth. Anyway, they sort of, as you probably know, they had a board meeting and he was ousted as CEO. So he then had some time on his own and he moved to an apartment south of San Francisco and he started learning to fly, got his pilot's license and so forth. And he didn't quite know what to do with himself. Or I wouldn't say that, putting it a bit strongly, but he wanted something to do. So he read about Robert Zubrin's rocket society, Mars Society. The Mars Society. And he joined the Mars Society and he was really enthralled by the Mars Society and their plans and how they had people living in the desert outside San Francisco, pretending to be on Mars and trying to imagine how they would live and all that sort of stuff if they were on Mars. And Elon was very excited by this, so much so that he gave them $100,000 deposit, gift to the Mars Society, and then he decided he's going to build his own rocket. He's going to buy a rocket from the Russians, and he's going to launch it. And I think you know the story. And then that turned out bad, and then he decided, well, he's going to build his own rocket. So he started actually sort of, what do you call it when you pinch other people's employees or something? He started looking for people who are working in the space industry and suggesting to them that they come and work for him instead, at the various agencies around the country. And he managed to get quite a few of them, one from Germany, a couple from, the Jet Propulsion Lab and so forth. And they came over and started working. And he put this money to work. I was one of the first workers there, as I said earlier. And he bought this somewhat dilapidated warehouse, big though, and in El Segundo, south of LA. And the lamps all hanging out of the ceiling and the ceiling boards were all hanging out, and there was water damage and God knows what. But anyway, we set about fixing this place up until eventually it had an enameled floor, white enameled floor, so much so that they made a movie called Iron Man in there. But at any rate, he started building these things, and as you pointed out, it got to the point by the fourth launch that he's going to lose $100 million, the last he had, because he put other money into Tesla, an electric car startup, and he was really going to be without any funds at all. And the fourth launch, the third launch was almost a success. I saw what was wrong with it. I immediately told him what was wrong with it. I think they listened to me. It started spinning, and because I have a lot of experience with aircraft, the fuel was being thrown to the sides. It was not reaching the exit pipes, and so it was fuel starved. You need to put baffles. All the planes, like the Boeings, they all have baffles. So when they turn from one side to the other, the fuel doesn't all run to one side or to the other side, if you know what I mean. And so the fourth launch was made, and it was a massive success. It was 5 seconds true. In other words, it was only 5 seconds of arc out of orbit, out of the orbit they wanted, which is ridiculously small. And it was a major success.
Well, he puts 100 million into SpaceX, and then he puts 6 million into Tesla, and he also helped create Solar City. So essentially, all the money he made from the sale of PayPal went into other companies, and like you said, he was essentially broke. I mean, was that Elon's mentality like his whole life? He didn't really care about money or, growing and, using compounded interest to kind of have a huge pile of money?
Yes. You see, Elon and Kimball and Tosca, they grew up with me from a very early age, as I spoke to you earlier about. They only knew that they lived in a very fine home in Waterkloof. By the time they were 8 or 9 years old, I had given up Mercedes-Benz cars. I had moved on to Rolls-Royce cars. So they only rode in Rolls-Royce cars, if you understand. They knew that if you wanted to go somewhere, you got into a twin-engined aeroplane that belonged to you, and you flew there. And then you landed on your airstrip, and you went to your lodge, if you understand. They weren't like other kids. And, they'd been to, as I said, they learned to ski in Europe when they were still 10 or under 10 years of age, So they lived what I would call a life that's not the life I led as a child. I never even had a bed until up to the age of 10. Never mind a bedroom. I never had a bed. I slept on a couch until I was 10 years old. My parents were too poor. We lived in 2 rooms in a boarding house in the immigrant section. We weren't poor. Poor people were rich compared to us. So, I never had anything like that. So when you start like I did, you do get money and you start to think, well, I should keep this and spend it as slowly as possible. But when you grow up like Elon and Kimball, particularly Elon, with his sort of, you mentioned like Asperger's or whatever it is, with a sort of different outlook on life, what the hell? You can make it again. You're never ever going to go down. You're entitled, man. You're one of those who just gets it, no matter what. And there's another term for it, shit floats, or something like that. Sorry for that gross comment, but anyway, so they were not used to anything like that. To them, hardship was when the Hilton ran out of fillet steak or something,
Well, yeah, because in 2012, Elon actually appeared on Forbes' Billionaire list for the first time. He had a $2 billion net worth.
Yeah.
How did it feel as a father to have a son that's now a billionaire?
Well, before that, in 2005, 2006, 2007, he was getting on. And I remember that they said that his net worth is now 672 million. I remember somebody telling me that he's now estimated to have 672 million, around about 2007, thereabouts. And they said, gee, and I said, no. Elon will not stop until he's number one. I said to these people, he won't stop until he's number one. At that time, I imagine Bill Gates may have been number one, I'm not sure. But he won't stop until he's number one. I mean, that's what I know because I'm his father. I know that. He's not going to stop until he's number one. And I can tell you now what's going to happen. You know, so it's because you know the people concerned. You know how they think. He's very frugal. He's very careful with how he does things. He's going to go on and on. You know, the IPO of Starlink is going to be worth $1 trillion. So, you know, SpaceX, to all intents and purposes, is already worth $1 trillion. So it's really a matter of it being a private company. No, I expected him to do that. So when Kimball started restaurant, I knew that in due course he would have many restaurants. So at the last count a few years ago, with all the eateries that they had, takeaways, they had over 3,000 and about 80 formal restaurants. So the same sort of thing, you know, they just keep on going. You know, it is a bit weird, but that's what happens, you know. And my daughter started making films. Now she makes films. Every 3 months she puts out a film, a full-length film.
Well, yeah, I mean, right now, I looked it up, he's worth $430 billion at this moment. So he really is poised. Like, let's just say Tesla stock doubles, which is very plausible because you've seen, you know, I own Tesla stock myself. I've owned 4 Teslas. It's my favorite car company, just to be totally honest. And the stock always goes crazy. Like, for example, when Trump got elected, it jumped up I think 50 or 60%. It was insane. So it's very plausible within a year or two, he could potentially be a trillionaire, the first trillionaire in human history.
Yeah, sure. You know, it doesn't help. You know, you can only eat so much fillet steak, and you can only have a bed this soft. There's not unlimited improvement to your personal life. It doesn't make much difference to your life. You know, it's like Lord Astor said back in 1912 when he was getting on the Titanic before he was drowned. He said, "Having £1 million is the same as being rich." He said that in 1912. He said, someone who has £1 million, it's the same as being rich. You know, if you can understand that, what he's meaning.
Yeah,
you know?
I feel you.
So, you know, Elon is very frugal. So, you know, he doesn't indulge in things. He's not like buying himself some sort of anything fancy. So maybe he'll get there. And Kimball's much the same. They're forever looking at new things that actually are interesting. That's the thing. So Kimball's got latest passion is these drones that make drone shows. You know, where they send 40,000 drones up and it makes a picture for a half a minute or something and then disappears. You know, Kimball's into that. And I bumped into him in UAE a couple of weeks ago, where he was doing this.
In 2015, Elon co-founded OpenAI.
Yes.
And then in 2016, he co-founded Neuralink.
Yes.
Which is the brain-computer interface.
Yes.
And he put $100 million into that company.
Yes.
He also started the Boring Company, which makes tunnels, and I think they have some in Las Vegas right now.
Yes.
So in 2016, you and Elon had a falling out over your support of Donald Trump, which is very ironic because now he's Donald Trump's best friend.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's weird. That's really weird. Well, what happened was, do you want to hear? Shall I tell you? Okay, well, after we left the US the way we did with our temporary passports, things were always a bit icy between us whenever we went overseas subsequently to see our daughters and things. But we never discussed it, so we just sort of kept our cool. Anyway, in 2016, though, I turned 70, and they came out to South Africa in private jets with about 50 people, many children, and also the cast of the Jungle Book movie with the actors and actresses that were in that movie in the crowd. You know, very well-known people. And also, I think, one of the owners of Google and so on. And anyway, we had this terrific lunch for my 70th birthday. It was very nice. We sequestered an entire block in the city. And and so at the end of the meal, towards the dessert portion or coffee portion, John Favreau turned across to me from the other side and said, so you support Trump? I believe you support Trump. So it was before the 2016 election, 6 months before the 2016 election. So I said, yes, I support Trump. And the result was, massive laughter. The whole crowd just burst into laughter. And, the three of us, Elon, Kimmel, and I, just sat there, while they laughed and laughed. And then finally, Favreau said, why? Why do you support Trump? With more laughter, So I said, well, he's just like us, he's just like us. To my mind, he's doing the same kind of work I always did, property development, and he's much bigger than I've ever been. And, it's great to see somebody who's not a career politician doing this kind of thing. Which they all laughed and said, no, he's they used profanity. They said he's a this and he's a that and he's a this and he's a that and everything, And they were all laughing their heads off. And this sort of brought the whole luncheon to a sort of grisly end. People started getting up and leaving and heading back to their vans, and I was left sitting alone in the restaurant, all alone. At the time, I just had open heart operation, so I was sitting there with my monitor draped around my neck and on my waist, my actual monitor, radio monitor for me to be monitored all the time. Sat there, and because the tube was very long, so I turned around my neck. Anyway, so I was sitting there, and then Elon and Kimmel came to me and said, what on earth do you think you're saying? And I said, well, he's just like us. I mean, Trump is just like us. He's us, he's who we are. And they said, Elon, Kimmel was frantically unhappy, using language I've never heard Kimmel use. Elon said, Trump is evil, and so on. Very matter of fact. Said, look, he's evil. Get it into your head. And then they left. I was left sitting alone, and that was it. I mean, I never discussed it again with them. I did go over a few times to my daughter's graduation and so forth in the next year or two, and to various other things, saw them, would see them. We never discussed anything. We just kept quiet. And so I was moderately surprised, but it happened gradually when things changed.
Okay. Now, at one point, Elon had a book that came out. And in the book, he spoke about you. He called you a terrible human being. He said, my dad will have a carefully thought out plan of evil. He will plan evil. He said almost every crime that you could possibly think of, he's done. He's good at making life miserable, that's for sure. He's not a happy man. I don't know how someone becomes like he is. And he also mentioned that him and his first wife, Justine, promised each other they wouldn't introduce their kids to you. Now, when you hear that, what do you think?
Well, I have met all these kids, so that's kind of strange to me. I met all the kids, when they were small. So, I mean, the first wife, Justine, less said the better from my point of view, So, that was a mistake. As far as Elon saying those things, I think he was interviewed by Rolling Stone magazine, and I think they could, I don't know, they must have caught him on a bad day or something. But I've never, as I replied, Rolling Stone phoned me and asked me if I'd like to comment. I said, well, I've never actually planned anything evil that I can think of, and I've certainly don't make plans to hurt anybody. I've simply never hurt anybody, deliberately anyway, in my life. I don't know what you're talking about. But I don't know, it depends how your kids see you. I mean, what I did do in my kind of career was I didn't suffer fools. And if something serious was going to be destroyed or ruined by the action of a fool, then I would not let it happen. Just not let it happen. And so they were very aware of the fact that I was somebody who acted very quickly in the event of things going rotten. And so, I look at the situation you had with Biden and the situation they've now got in England. That wouldn't have happened if I had been there under my watch. Never. I would never let something like that happen. I'd do whatever's necessary to stop such bad things from happening that these so-called government people did, you know. Fortunately, now they're going to face the music. But at any rate, yeah, it's possible that they were aware of me dealing with contractors, dealing with people harshly, and not deliberately. It was in where a person was put into a position where you either deal with the situation or it's going to get worse, you know. So I don't really know what he was talking about, actually. It was a surprise to me because at that time I was more or less retired, you know. I actually retired from very big involvement when I was about 35. So, you know, I don't know what he was talking about. So what I can say is, you know, I'm an open ocean qualified skipper or yachtsman, you know, and people have said they will let their children or their people go anywhere with me across the ocean, whereas they won't let them go with anybody else. And the same thing has been said about me with flying. Because they'd say, I'll let my child go with Errol, but not with anybody else. Because I think they see I'm not going to let them down. Something like that. Anyway, you know, so what I would say is it's pity that he said things like that. Stupid, really.
Well, you responded. You said Elon needs to grow up. He needs to get over himself. I'm not going to hit back. I'm going to wait until he comes to his senses. He's having a tantrum like a spoiled child.
Yes.
He can't have what he wants, and now I'm apparently an evil monster. What exactly does he want?
Well, I don't know. You know, I mean, I think the working in the technical field was nice to see your ideas come to fruition. But at the end of the day, we are political animals, all of us. You know, we are much happier among a crowd at a party than we are in a crowd doing drawings or something, where we can you know, argue with one another and so on. I always said my history teacher used to tell me politics is 50% of life. So now he's changed. He's now got into the political world. And the political pool, the swimming pool, let's say, of the political world is very, very deep. You're never going to hit the bottom. You can swim as much as you like. You can try as hard as you want. You're never going to get to the bottom. You're never going to get to the side, and you're never going to get to the other side. So that's great, because you're not going to conquer that world. You're going to come out as a battled, wounded veteran, but you're never going to conquer it. No one in history is labeled as he conquered politics. No one. No one. You know what I mean? And so in that respect, Elon is now in the political world. And all the money in the world, all the, you know, whatever you want to put it, is not going to help you. Because if you haven't got the quick slap back, if you haven't got the wit, if you haven't got the repartee, you're done. You're done. You know? So you have to be able to nobody knows what it is. What makes a champion movie actor? It's a little bit similar. What makes a champion politician? It's very difficult to say. We think of, when we think of politicians, people say, Churchill, he was great. What do you remember about him? Oh, he said, we'll fight on the beaches. You know? Then who else? Oh, I don't know. Reagan was good, wasn't he? What did he say? Tear down this wall, Mr. Gorbachev. You see, so that's what you remember these people for. It's not because they were consistent or something like that. And, you know, it's a very new world for him. And it's a world that has no bottom or sides. And so that's probably quite good. And it's a world where you easily get wounded. It's like being a weak gladiator in the Colosseum. You know what I mean? You know, best, just make sure you can run, you know, if you are a weak gladiator in the Colosseum.
Well, 2022, Elon buys Twitter for $44 billion.
Yeah.
I didn't see this one coming. Were you surprised that Elon bought Twitter?
Well, I was involved with that, so it's not that I was surprised. What happened was, towards the end of 2021, Biden, who Elon had done everything he could to support, by the way. You know, he was a Biden man. You know, all his friends who came with him to the birthday party I had, they were all these flaming Democrats. Elon was a flaming Democrat. Kimball was a flaming Democrat. Anyway, towards the end of 2021, when Biden was already showing what he was doing, nevertheless, he invited all the electric car makers to the White House for a week to come and discuss the making of America into an electric car country by 2035. Invited all the car makers except Tesla. Now, Tesla had made 1 million cars that year and sold them. The other 5 manufacturers had built 26 cars and hadn't sold one, not one. And so Elon couldn't understand this. At first, he thought it was some kind of joke, because in his book, he was the golden boy of everyone. Everyone viewed him as the golden boy. You know, at that point in time, SpaceX was humming, you know, and we'd already, you know, put people, I think, in space, or nearly got people in space. So SpaceX was humming, everything was humming, and Tesla was looking for the first time like it's going to be okay, and he's left out. So in the month that followed, Elon started saying things like, Biden is a loony, he's a lunatic. We've got a lunatic for a president. And the government is loony. It was a sort of Canadian expression, actually. And then I said to him, you know, immediately I started seeing these things, I said, do you realize what you're doing? You're now entering the political world for the first time, and you are saying things that are aimed at political targets. And I said, these people don't just take your money away, they kill you. They take your life away if you get in their way. So, because I knew that from my own life, my own experience. When I stood as a candidate for parliament in this country, I was threatened with death. We actually caught the people who were doing the threats. The police caught them in my time. Anyway, so I said to Elon, you have to be careful what you're doing. But he carried on, and then a deluge of things were said on Twitter that Elon is a POS, and he has to be deported, and he must go back to South Africa. He's a blur on the landscape of the US, and all that kind of stuff. And he'd never ever had anything like that said about him, ever. And this all came from Twitter. And then it was explained to him, and I said to him, get your bodyguards right, get your bodyguards, and check see who's appointing your bodyguards to start with. Anyway, then I said, then people said to him, Twitter is not a private company. It's a political arm of the Democrat Party, and it's even part of the crooked FBI. They use Twitter to pretend that it's private, but it's not. It's a government department. Twitter is essentially just another Democratic government department. And so when he heard this, he said, okay, if that's the case, it's a private company, I'm going to buy it. At that stage, we valued Twitter at $7 billion, which was for their database, really. A lot of money. It's a huge amount of money. But they started making it very difficult for him to buy it, until eventually, as you pointed out, he was forced to pay $44 billion for it. If he could have waited, but the courts forced him. The Democrat courts forced him to pay $44 billion. If he could have held it out until 9 months later, say April the next year, he would have been able to buy Twitter for $1 billion, because it was bleeding $1 billion a month at the time, you know. And anyway, he paid the $44 billion. He said, fine. And he's now turned it into a free speech platform. And the only real free speech platform at the moment available.
Well, last year, the Wall Street Journal did a report, and they said that the $13 billion that Elon borrowed to buy Twitter is considered the worst deal in merger finance that banks have participated in since the 2008 financial crisis, because they say that the company has lost $24 billion in equity since Elon took it over.
Well, it's now doing 10 times more than it ever did as Twitter, and it doesn't stop growing. And Elon's plan to make it into an information source like a search engine like Google, a place where you can pay your electricity bill, your car, finance can be done through it. He wants to turn it into all those things. I would not bet against Elon. Definitely, I would advise him. The other thing is the banks were running to lend him the money. So please take the money from us. So, so I'm not worried about that at all. I mean, Twitter will become worth $100 billion, so then it'll be fine.
Well, I mean, recently he introduced the Tesla robots, and he said that in the future, these robots will be the biggest selling product of all time.
Yes.
And that kind of makes sense, because if you think about it, iPhones are now probably the biggest selling product of all time.
Yeah.
So this is essentially an iPhone with arms and legs that can go around and do stuff for you.
Yes.
So I could totally imagine this, as long as, no humans get killed along the way of these robots doing their job.
Yeah,
I would love to have a Tesla robot.
You said the other day, I'm not sure I totally agree with him because it's so soon, but Elon said by 2040 there'll be more Tesla robots than people. Which is a bit odd, but
yeah, I mean, if you look at human history, at one point, cars represented 1% and horses represented 99% of transportation in America.
Yeah.
And now cars are 99% and horses are 1%, if that.
Yes, absolutely.
So technology definitely, at one point people used to use oil to light candles in their home, and then electricity came around, and now nobody uses oil except for just decorative candles. So
it's very hard to tell the future. Very hard. But I would. Elon's very good at that. He's very good at the future. So, for example, back in 1994, when they started Zip2, well, they didn't know what they were going to call it, but let's assume it became Zip2. But Elon, they started with the idea that they would start a search engine for like Garmin GPS maps or something like that, so that in the first, they brought one out, City Search or something, and then you put your location down, and then the computer would print out a written page, and with little arrows and give you all the directions to this place, and then you would follow this written schedule. And then, this was about 95, and then 1995, and then they discovered that there are a lot of people doing this. A lot of people are doing this. So around about August 95, Elon had been in computers since the early 80s. He'd also had a modem he showed me a modem when he was about 12, 13, showed me this gray box with a red light on it. He said, "Dad, what do you think this is?" And I said, "I don't know, what is it?" He said, "This is a modem." Now he was about 12 or 13. He said, "With this thing, I can communicate with my little computer. I can communicate with the computer at Oxford University." I said, "Well, how do you do that?" He said, "I just put it into the telephone line, and then it communicates." I said, "What? How much does that cost?" He said, "No, it's not a telephone call. It gets superimposed on the lines, the information, something like that." Anyway, so he was good at looking at the future, and he said one day everybody will have a modem. And so in 95, Elon said to me and to Kimball, or rather to me, he said to me that the internet's going to have to go, the newspapers are going to have to go onto the internet. Now, that was such a far out idea, I mean, what? What do you mean? In those days, everybody bought their newspaper every day, and it was a thick wad, every day. And he said, no, the newspapers are going to have to go onto the internet. There won't be paper newspapers. So we all said, well, what are you going to do? He said he wants to go and see a publishing company that publishes paper newspapers called Knight Ridder. So they're going the next day. They've got an appointment. They were 24 and 23 years old, more or less, And they're going to see this place to explain to them that they're going to have to change, because they were, at that point, this Knight Ridder was publishing Miami Herald, LA Times, San Francisco Chronicle, and about 11 major newspapers. And they're going to have to change to do only online publishing. So they went to see them, and they came out of that meeting with a check for $4 million from Knight Ridder. Do it. And so the ability to see that far ahead, Elon has that ability. There's no doubt about it. I have a certain amount of that ability. For example, right now I'm busy with a new institute that we're trying to establish people have said we should call it the Musk Institute. I didn't say that. But we need to study space-time travel. We need to study space-time travel, which is coupled with gravity. We need to solve fusion. If we don't do these things, then the popular vision that we all have of the future, of cars and things floating up and down, as you see in all the movies, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We'll still be doing the same thing 100 years from now. So we have to do that. We have to move into the future. And so I have the idea to start an institute of study in that direction where we attract all the crazy geeks of the world to come and think. Anyway, that's another story. But Elon has the ability to see what the future needs. So his idea on robots is not lost.
I agree. I definitely agree. Well, late last year, the two of you hugged for the first time in years. Is that true?
Late last year, yes. He asked me if I'd like to come and see the launch of a Starship. So I said, okay. So I went over to Boca Chica, and the two of us, we had a great time. And we spent the weekend together. And interesting enough, after this very successful launch, they had a party afterwards, a sort of a Hawaiian party for about 250 workers. Everybody was having a good time, and Elon stopped the proceedings. He said to everyone, "This is my dad." Put his arm around me. He said, he's taller than me, Put his arm around me, and he said, "My dad taught me everything I know about engineering," which is rather a nice thing to say. I then immediately said, no, you taught yourself a lot of things. But that's what he did. And so, so we had a good meeting. It was nice. Very nice.
Well, Elon has been married twice, has 12 children.
Yes.
He lost one child through sudden infant death syndrome, unfortunately.
Yes.
One of his children is transgender.
Yes.
You had mentioned at one point that he didn't really spend a lot of time with his kids.
Yes, I did see that because of divorce, that's what happens, it's very difficult. And then with the type of work you're doing, I had the same problem when they were small. I was always away. I relied on my wife. I couldn't, always just be there, I didn't work a fixed schedule. So, he had the same problem. I think many men, Kimball as well, had that problem. I see now with the new little boy X, which I met last year, and Siobhan's children I met last year, he spends a lot of time with that one. He's trying to make sure that he spends time with this one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the baby he has with Grimes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, one of the two kids.
Yes.
I remember in Elon's book, I saw an interview with the biographer, and he talked about something called demon mode, where at certain times Elon just gets really hyper-focused and really angry and really short with people and so forth. And Grimes even pointed out to the biographer at one point, goes, "Look, Elon's in demon mode right now." Do you know what that is, and have you experienced that?
Yeah, I think it's roughly the same thing that he was referring to me, when you get into demon mode. If you see a situation where a calamity is coming your way, you either get into demon mode, even if you're sailing a ship or flying an airplane or running a business, or you're going to go down in flames. And if you don't do it and get people to, perform properly and wake up. So demon mode is sometimes needed in every business. I think Steve Jobs was famous for demon mode. And I can tell you a few others that I know in this country who actually went beyond demon mode and went to fist mode in business meetings.
Yeah, the same biographer that wrote Elon's book also wrote Steve Jobs' final biography, and he called Steve's situation the reality distortion field, where he would go to his engineers and say, "Okay, the new iMac, how long is it going to take?" And they'll say 6 months. And he'll say, "I need it in 2 weeks."
Yeah.
And they'll say, "That's completely impossible." But he's like, "No, I need it in 2 weeks." And he'll drive them, and 2 weeks later, it'll actually be done.
Yeah.
But, so it would get accomplished, but the people end up getting no sleep, and, they'll go through hell in order to do it. Is that kind of a similar thing that Elon does?
Yes, it's a similar thing that every successful businessman does. Every successful businessman, commander, general, captain has that situation. It's called, live or die.
Final question. Like I said in the beginning, Elon's worth almost $500 billion right now.
Yes.
Does he financially help you out and his other siblings, or are you guys pretty much on your own?
Yes, the family foundation, the family company rather, provides for all the single women monthly, and also a little bit of help to those that are married, the women. And for me, a little bit of help. I don't ask for much help because I'm self-supporting, you see, so I don't really have much need for help. I don't really need help. But last year, I must just tell you, I wanted, Elon suggested buying me a car last year, so it was originally going to be a Tesla, which was going to be sent out here, but the price was astronomical, and we're not set up at all for anything like that. So I thought, no, I don't want to be outside service range and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, that was about 18 months ago. And then last year, towards the end of last year, they said, would you like a car? And I said, yeah. So they said, well, what are you going to get? Why don't you get a Jeep or something? So I said, no, I don't want a Jeep. I want something decent. So, sorry, a Jeep is very decent. What I mean is, I wanted something else. So they said, well, what do you want? I said, I want a Bentley. So Elon said, sure, Bentley. So there's a Bentley in my garage now. Bentley Flying Spurs. So it's very nice. I haven't put the number plates on yet. Still trying to put the number plates on. I haven't got there yet,
Okay, but you're saying that there's a foundation that basically financially supports this whole extended family?
Yes, if somebody gets ill or needs anything, but all the single women receive a monthly income,
Oh.
All the single women, my ex-wife, in fact, Haida, receives a monthly income. All the single women, and then if they're married, they also get a little bit of help, and so on. So they help everyone. Yeah, I don't really have a great need for assistance, but occasionally they help me if I ask. They help me with my medical costs. My medical costs were $1 million. So the medical aid only provided 600,000. So they bridged that gap for me. That was nice. That was a big help.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, what Elon is doing is, you can't even call it generational wealth. This is like millennial wealth, I guess.
Yes. I mean, if these companies like the SpaceX go public, they'd have a great deal of, it would be $1 trillion. He'd be worth $1 trillion, But of course, it's not always a good thing to go public, No. Look, they do whatever's necessary financially to help. I certainly have no complaints with them, either Kimball or Elon, If you ask them, they help you. It's as simple as that.
Mm. No, look, I've always been a huge fan of Elon Musk. I remember I bought a Tesla around 9 years ago. It was a Model S. And ever since then, that's the only cars that I bought.
Well, sure. Once you've bought an electric...
I'm on my fourth Tesla right now. Yeah, I've got my current car is a Model X Plaid, which is basically the fastest car in America. I know that whenever I'll do interviews with fighters or athletes, and I'll put them in the passenger seat and take them around the block, and they're like screaming like little girls because they're so terrified.
People get a terrible surprise. Once you start the electric car, I mean, when I'm over there, I only drive electric cars. When I'm going to the US, I mean, I've been twice in the last 12 months, I've spent 12 weeks there. So you only drive electric cars. I mean, why would you drive anything else? And I'm quite surprised with my most recent trip, or was it the one before that, when the long trip to Boca Chica, you go to a Shell service station, and on the one side is the petrol pumps, on the other side are all the electric charging stations. And the big thing is to get in there and find an empty charging station, because there might be like 15 charging stations, and there's a car at every single one, And you go, oh. And so you wait for one to move on, and so that you can go in and charge. Yeah, so that was a new one for me quite recently. But before that, we always did home charging. And so, once you drive an electric car, you're not going to easily go back to a petrol car. No, you're not easily.
No. Yeah, once you go electric, the thought of going to a gas station, the smell, the dirt, picking up the nozzle, putting it in, putting your credit card in, dealing with the homeless guy, the homeless guy that wants to wash your windows and so forth. There's nothing like it. It's almost like going from a cassette tape to an MP3. Yes,
absolutely. No, it's really funny. It's completely agree with you. In fact, if I went over there, my daughter's got the new X, the one with the doors that go up.
Yeah, the Model X. That's what I have. Yeah.
And we really like that one. Really like that one. She had the Y before, but they've got a Y and an S. But the Y was for the baby. She got 2 babies, and so but now she's got the X. Because the Y's also got 3 rows of seats.
Yeah, no, listen, like I said, the best cars I've ever owned, and I could pretty much buy anything. If I wanted to buy a Rolls Royce or a Bentley, I would go get one. But I just find these cars to be more enjoyable to drive, which is why I've been buying them. Yeah.
No question about it. No question about it. In due course, there will only be electric cars. I mean, obviously, it's not it's not rocket science.
Yeah, that's inevitable.
Yeah.
It's not an if, it's a when.
Yes.
Well, Errol Musk, I definitely appreciate you coming in and telling your story. I've been a huge fan of your son, and now I see where he got it from. So congratulations on really your whole life and all your accomplishments along the way.
Thank you.
I feel that you're a very big part of Elon's story.
Thank you.
You have an incredible story yourself as well. So I completely appreciate you coming in and hope to do it again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's what it is. Until next time. Peace.
Okay, bye.